Hi, everyone. A couple of years ago, when I was talking with a Bible scholar, a Bible teacher, I asked him what was one of the biggest challenges that Christianity in America faced to one of the biggest challenges it faced to its survival. His answer intrigued me. He looked at me and said, pragmatics. I didn't quite understand what he meant by that at the time, but I reflected on it ever since. This idea that, in many cases, worship, or what is called worship in American Christianity, focuses more on pragmatic things. If it works for some result, and then leave out all that other fluff and just stick with basic things. I get that to some degree. Business can be made efficient that way, but problem is that in this attempt to kind of cut away the fat, how much do you cut away that really is actually necessary for the full experience? That's why I wanted to take just a couple minutes this morning to talk about the necessity of beauty. When you worship, when you come close to God, and typically worship should help facilitate that sense of drawing close to the one that created you, that sustains you, to the one who, drawing close to the God who redeems you, who offers a promise of eternal life in Jesus Christ, the one who offers redemption from all the ways in which we can screw up our lives even now. When you draw close to God, that should have multiple effects of making things beautiful. It should have this sense of, I'm glad I'm drawing close to God, because that changes everything and it gives me a vision for a better existence in the future, not just in this life, but in the one to come. And that's why beauty is so important to bring close, have part of the worship experience. It's not just the pragmatics of, show up, listen to something, maybe participate a little bit, but then leave again after you've given your offering. And now we're just all, we've cut out the fat out of our system, out of our experience. No, beauty is important. Beauty has to be part of our human experience. It has to be part of our worship experience. And to that end, uh, church should have parts of it that maintains that beauty in its architecture, in its expression, in its music, in all the ways it comes together, but specifically ways in which it reflects the beauty that we had prior to even losing our close relationship with God back in the Garden of Eden. For this reason, we have flowers in our church. We have flowers up by the altar, and we make sure they're planted around the church grounds. And that's why, we do this because, well, the flowers really, in the process of worship, are meant to remind people of that unobstructed access to God that they had back in the Garden of Eden. If you remember back in the story of Genesis, before man sinned and was cast out of the garden, this idea that you would have unobstructed access to God, and the phrase that was used is that God walked with Adam in the cool of the day, and that sense of being able to commune with God, being able to be close by, be able to be intimate with God in that regard, has all of these overtones of the Garden of Eden. Well, you want to remind people of the garden. You want to remind people of that type of time. You want to remind them of that type of communion they have with God. And as a result, you want to use those flowers as a reminder that you're, in many ways, theologically at least, entering back into the garden. You have that access again that you, in many ways, didn't know you were even missing. Sometimes we don't even have the full perception of how much we're missing out on from what we lost in the garden. So worship has to have, as part of its ambiance, as part of its atmosphere, as part of its surroundings, reminders of the garden, reminders of the Garden of Eden. So we have flowers at our altar. We have flowers around our church planted. We have, in many ways, we also have women of our church that are our flower guild, that are, those who maintain those flowers to put at our altar. It's an incredibly important and necessary part of our worship to remind us of that theological return to the garden, in a sense, so that we have that blessing, so we have that reminder. because ultimately worship, going past this problem of pragmatics, has to return us to beauty. It has to have the aspects of it that remind us of how we return back to our time with God in the garden. So that's why we use our flowers in our service. And that's why in many cases, many churches do this, not all, but many churches do have people dedicated to making sure you have fresh flowers at the altar or around your church. We plant them outside as well. And this is a tremendous blessing, and it helps us remember who it is that we're worshiping, and the fact that in worship we have that return to communion with God. All right? Keep that in mind as you go about your week. Have a great day.